was adopted at 4 months old. I always knew I was adopted. My parents had 2 boys. They wanted girls. They adopted me, and they adopted my younger sister. And I always knew that I wanted to find at least my birth mother. Hopefully my birth parents, but definitely my birth mother, because I just couldn't imagine not knowing what happened to my child when I would have thought I was making a good decision for my child due to my circumstances at that time, and then never knowing. And so I always had the intention of searching for and finding my birth mother. And thankfully, my parents were supportive of that and could understand and made it seem like a natural thing. And it was such a personal quest for me to find. I really wanted to find them on my own. And so when I turned 18, I took whatever information I had and I started searching. And it's a super emotional endeavor. And I would go through waves of searching and then taking a break. And sometimes I would go to the library and look through the microfilm and microfiche, and that would make me sick. Looking through all different records and printing out birth announcements, going through newspapers. And I had set the goal of finding them by the time I was 30. I was so frightened about waiting until it was too late and then discovering that they might have passed away. And so when I was in my late 20s, I requested my non-identifying information from the Children's Home Society, and they gave me like 2.5 printed sheets of kind of a little bit about my birth mother and her family, a little bit less about my birth father and his family, because it was told to the agency from my birth mother's point of view. But I learned quite a bit from that, and used that information to again go back and search. And that I had to spend money for that, and I was a college student, so I didn't really have a lot of money to spend, but I started worrying because 30 was coming up. And I searched again on and off, looking, and was just coming into dead end after dead end. And so the year I was to turn 30, about, 4 or 5 months before I was to turn 30, I hired what's called a confidential intermediary, which was how Washington State, that's where I was born, handled accessing records and searching was done through a confidential intermediary. So I did that. I hired somebody, again, costing money, that as a college student was precious, but 30 was around the corner, and I had that as my deadline. And what happened was I got a phone call from the confidential intermediary, and she told me that she'd gotten into my file at the Children's Home Society. She had access to it. It was my file, but I did not have access to it. And she said that there was a letter there from my birth mother from 1979. And she said she would send me a copy of it. And I said, will you read it over the phone to me? Because if I die in my sleep, at least I'll have some idea of what my birth mother had been thinking at some point in time. And so she did read that letter, and I will share that letter with you. My dearest daughter, there are no words to describe my excitement. I just read an article in a magazine that reports natural mothers can write letters to their children, ask that they be placed in the file, and then hopefully when you reach age, you can request your folder and receive these letters. There's so much I could say now, and I will say it all in the next several years, so that should you ever request your file, and I pray daily that you will get to know the other side of your life. I think of you often, especially as you are about to become a teenager. I pray life has been good to you and that we can one day become friends. A friend forever, Janice. P.S. I hope you won't be offended at my calling you my daughter. There is nothing I would ever do to try and step in where your adoptive parents have provided and loved for so long. I mentally named you Suzanne Marie 13 years ago, and I guess I could call you that. In any event, please take these letters as they are meant, an effort in love, for I do and have always loved you. That was from October 1979, so I would have been on the verge of turning 13 later that year. I asked the confidential intermediary why the children's home had not told me that this letter existed in my file when I had requested my non-identifying information years before, and she had no answer. And I was just worried sick that, in the subsequent years, my birth mother might have passed away, and I would have missed my opportunity. And that was a very heavy concern. And yeah, I went to sleep that night just hoping that she was still alive. And thankfully, she was. Wishing you all peace